Thank you. I've had the thumbs up now, so apparently I'm live. Whatever that, I thought I was live when I got up this morning, but I'm glad I've got a thumbs up to prove it. So, good morning everybody. I'm Councillor Jim O'Boyle from Coventry City Council. I've just got a few words to say this morning as by way of introduction about what's going on really in Coventry and why this is a great place to work and live. I'd also like to thank the team at ZPN for inviting me along today. It's great to see you all here. I think you're in for a great session this morning and talking all things about green transport, and there's no better city to do this than in Coventry. This is the first event in the world to celebrate both the growing e-mobility sector and the innovative technology companies supporting the move to cleaner transport. ZPN Energy Limited is a real leader in this sector and is just one of the city's brilliant innovators working towards a carbon neutral future. I'm always really pleased to talk about Coventry's leading role in the British and world motor industry in the past, in the present, and of course the future. The sector shaped our city of Coventry, providing good skills and good jobs for local people. We were the pioneers in those early days, and we are still at the forefront as we bring in the technologies that will drive the industry in the years to come. The green industrial revolution will once again power the economy, and we and businesses like ZPN are at the heart of it. I'm sure you will get into some business detail later, but I want to give you an overview of the long-term strategies and innovations that will help us further our work in transport whilst reducing the global impact of CO2 emissions and protecting our planet for future generations. Coventry is at the very heart of this and fast developing sector. We are home to famous brands. We have some of the best research and development facilities in the world, 2 leading universities recruiting the best and brightest in a skilled workforce ready to lead the way in the new look motor industry. There's so much good work taking place that will revolutionise transport. It is such an exciting time for the industry. Our council is collaborating with Warwick Manufacturing Group, Transport for West Midlands and Dudley Council to apply innovative research and development in the urban light rail sector. The aim is to create a reliable, environmentally friendly, battery-driven, hop-on, hop-off transport system that will work at a fraction of the cost of a traditional tram. A pioneering world first, Coventry Very Light Rail will operate autonomously at a high frequency to provide a turn up and go service. There will be no unsightly overhead cables and the track will be laid without the need to relocate services. Our team from Coventry are here today with the CVLR driver simulator. So make sure you do give it a try. It's a lifelike glimpse into the near future. CVLR Coventry Very Light Rail, we are very, very proud of, and it's something that is happening here in Coventry, and there's nothing else like it anywhere in the world. And I do urge you, if you get the chance, have a go on the simulator just to give an idea of what this will be. But it's not just about the vehicle, it's the track system that is really driving the cost savings here and is the massive innovation that is taking place right here in Coventry. For electric vehicles, we are bidding for more funding, for more on-street charge points. Coventry already has more than any other city in the country outside of London. Our rapid chargers can recharge an electric vehicle in as little as 30 minutes using 100% renewable electricity. But if that's not quick enough, we're even looking into self-charging roads. Western Power Distribution is exploring the feasibility of wireless on-the-go charging for electric vehicles. The study is the first of its kind in the UK and will assess the viability of charging electric vehicles as they are driven by using wireless inductive technology placed under road surfaces. It could encourage more people to take up electric vehicles without the worry over charging points, and could revolutionise as well the HGV industry. Talking of electric vehicles, Coventry is home to the UK Battery Industrialisation Centre, which is a world leader in this sector. The centre is a cutting-edge research facility which enables the scale-up and manufacture of the batteries that power the electric vehicles and autonomous vehicles of the future. There is no other place like this, not just anywhere in the country, anywhere really in the world, and it's centred right here in Coventry. And of course, Coventry is leading the charge for a gigafactory, the West Midlands gigafactory, right here in Coventry. It has the potential to create thousands of new jobs and to power the green transport industrial revolution. And for those from Coventry or the West Midlands, and I hope you all are, may have heard or seen lots of rumours about potential gigafactories and companies and all the rest of it. Take it from me, this is a real live piece of work at the moment, and I'm very confident an announcement will be made in the not too distant future. We're in conversation with 6 world leading battery manufacturers to locate right here in Coventry, and that is really, really important. So forget all the fluff that you hear or read or see. We are at the heart of what we need to do here. In the UK, demand for electric vehicle battery manufacturing capacity is expected to reach 200 gigawatts by 2040, and by then the automotive industry could employ 170,000 people in electric vehicle manufacturing, 35,000 in gigafactories and 65,000 in the battery supply chain. This gives us all a sense of the challenge and of course of the prize, and it's why we are already developing an excellent skills pipeline for jobs linked to electric vehicles. We supported Coventry College to secure £1.8 million of investment to build a state-of-the-art Charge Your Future training centre. This is already providing training in electric vehicle repair and electric charge point installation and maintenance. In the world of connected and autonomous vehicles, Coventry is also in the driving seat. We are part of UK Autodrive, a £19 million 3-year project bringing together 12 private, public and university partners to develop and deploy driverless technologies on the streets of Coventry, Warwickshire and Milton Keynes. We're also increasing our own council fleet of electric bin lorries and other vehicles. In public transport, our city has been awarded £50 million to fund all electric buses. And if you're out and about in the city, look out for them because they're already on a number of routes around the city. And by 2025, our whole fleet of buses in the city will be all electric, the only place in the UK to have that accolade. The project aims to improve air quality, lower greenhouse gas and reduce the costs of running buses. The electric buses will also provide a more comfortable passenger experience, which will help to boost the number of users. And if you prefer life on 2 wheels, we're going all out for A-star rated routes, fully segregated and already supporting more people to take to 2 environmentally friendly wheels. We know if we put in the infrastructure where people feel safe, they may make a different choice to go in less than 2 miles. Most journeys in Coventry and cities like this are less than 2 miles. The question we always ask is, do you need to jump into your car? Do I need to jump into my car? If I've got an alternative, I may take the alternative. And we know if we give people a choice, they often make the right choice. And that's important. It's not about doing away with the car. It's about giving people different choices. Recently, Coventry welcomed Air One, the world's first airport for electric aircraft, including air taxis and autonomous delivery drones. The winner of the government's Future Flight Challenge, Air One is a fully operational hub for future electric vehicle takeoff and landing aircraft, with the potential to holistically decarbonise transport, reduce congestion and air pollution. And we know how important trains are to our future. That's why you'll see the results of massive investment in our railway station. As well as increasing capacity and making life better for rail customers, we are making it a hub for onward green travel, including public transport, walkways and cycle paths, helping people to reach our city in an easy, carbon-free way. Ladies and gentlemen, this is just a very quick tour of some of the exciting things happening right now in Coventry. Autonomous vehicles, electric batteries, roads that power your car as you drive. They do sound pretty fantastic and futuristic, but they are no longer incredible ideas from the world of science fiction. They are a reality, and we must make them a part of our cities. Without them, the industry our city loves would wither and die. More importantly, so will the planet. Climate change is here and it's not going away. It's up to us all to tackle it, and the time to take that action is now. We want Coventry to be the centre of manufacturing, of research and design, and we want to attract and retain companies that will bring jobs and prosperity to our residents. We already have a dynamic and innovative cluster, as this event today proves. This sector will support the city's economy, the region's economy, and indeed the country's economy. It will create and secure jobs, but it will also ensure Coventry is a healthy, clean and green city that gives a good quality of life to our residents. To help that, we are determined to pioneer this next stage of the transport industry. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to tell you why our city is so passionate about the new sustainable transport industry. And thank you again to ZPN. In fact, somebody in my office, I asked them yesterday, I said, what time do I need to be at ZPN? And they looked at me and they said, ZPN. Anyway, I sent him home for further lessons in how to pronounce companies in Coventry, and ordered him to give up his Netflix subscription. ZPN, for inviting me along. I wish you a happy and productive event, and good luck for the future. Thank you very much.
Devon County Council could learn a lot from what Coventry are doing, and it's really good to hear with such a number of innovative things. We're obviously in a leading space in the technology. It's about the application of that technology to make it work, and I'm a prime example of that, in that I still drive a diesel car, but I run a company that makes EV chargers. The reason I still drive a diesel car is because I can't actually make it work properly for me. Without actually losing so much time, the cost is far greater. So I'm running my diesel Discovery, allegedly ULEZ compliant, until it dies or blows up or whatever happens next, and then we'll decide. So what we do next. So next up is Andy Street, Mayor of the West Midlands. I think he's just arrived. I'm not sure where he is, but anyway, we'll see him in a second. Obviously today is the first day of INEED. my team have registered the International Networked Energy and E-Mobility Day as an official day. So it's registered as a day. It's not quite with the United Nations yet, but we're sort of leading. And part of why I asked for my team to pull this together was that it's so easy to stay in your own little bubble and only deal with your own customers and only deal with your own suppliers and only deal with who is sort of bumping into you every day. And one of the things I sort of said was, you know, we're on an industrial estate and there is about 10 businesses, including the banana place over there. We don't talk to them. Just think of all the bananas we could get. You know, but that is part of it. You know, if that's the only thing that came out of it, that would improve everyone's health, wouldn't it? So it's kind of about sort of engaging with everyone around us, everyone in the West Midlands. We started with the West Midlands, so again, this first year, and thanks for all you turning up, but moving forward, hopefully it will become an annual event. We'll get bigger and bigger and bigger, and then you'll probably find us at the NEC or something, and then you'll have to pay to be it. So, so take it while it's cheap. You know, there is a massive opportunity in this market. You can talk to almost anyone in this room, you know, whether the guys, you know, Martin from Horizon or Philip from E.ON, you know, they're prime players in this market, and there's big stuff going on in the background. So, is Andy ready to start? Easy chatting. He's gone to get a banana, yeah. I think he might be sitting in his air-conditioned car. So, obviously, if you've got any questions today about what ZPN does, there's a number of team members that are around. The guys that are all dressed down, they've got t-shirts and things on, are our media agency. So if you want good filming done and content creation, they're the people to talk to. But in terms of ZPN staff, you've got Nick. I'll introduce a few people. So that's Nick. He is our chairman. You've got John Miller there, who's our COO. That's Keith. He's our maintenance guy. So if anything's broken or your electric's failed or anything like that, he's the guy to talk to. Can't see anyone else. They've all run off. If you see a big lanky guy, he's Ben. He's super tech guy. So if you want to know anything of the technicality behind stuff. Oh yeah, sorry, the small one at the back there is Callum. He's done something to his hair. Apparently he was trying to create in the image of me and it went blonde. So I don't know how that went. Probably with a motorhome, hopefully an electric one. But yeah, so I've run out of things to say really for now. So here we go. Politicians. Just when you want one, two arrive, one of them late.
One of them on time.
Look, yeah, absolutely. One of
Whether
them.
you want to prove that not all politicians are the same.
To be fair, Andy is amazing. So he's been here before.
All right,
so.
don't go on.
We haven't seen.
It is. It's the only title.
There's a mark on the floor there.
Yeah. Okay. Fine. Right. Good morning.
Do you need a microphone?
I probably do.
It's going through that.
Oh, it's going through there. So as long as I look at that. Okay. Good morning, everybody. Lovely to be here and great to be back at ZPN again. And I should start off just by saying congratulations on hosting what the brief says, and there's no immodesty in this from the ZPN team, is the inaugural International Networked Energy and E-Mobility Day. I think it was first titled as Love Electric, so that was a fairly easier way for me to get my brain around what we were really talking about than some grand title. I've been asked to say a few words to sort of kick off the session and then to take any questions you may want. But I'll say right at the beginning that I am not the expert on everything that goes on in ZPN and the technical issues around energy storage. We have lots of wonderful scientists who do that. I'm not the expert. What I hope I can do then is just pull out where this work and this subject fits into the bigger picture. And I'm going to actually finish with 6 public policy issues that I think we have to sort out to enable you to be as successful as you can be and the sector to move forward. So that's the sort of structure that we're going to put around this, if that's okay. And I hope some of what I will say will confirm what Jim has said as well, because if we're not joined up on this, God help us, frankly. So hopefully that will be consistent. Now, of course, the really big context here is, I'll say, the world's, certainly Britain's, mission to be net zero UK target by 2050. Our target in the West Midlands is 2041, and the fact that we are 9 years ahead of the UK target shows an utter commitment there. And I think what is clear, if I reflect back on the last 4 years since we set that target, is all the local authorities across the West Midlands, including, of course, Coventry City Council, came together to agree that regional target and the regional plan. They have their own targets as well. Our role in the region is partly to enable them to achieve their own individual target. 2041 we chose because, yes, it was ambitious, but it's also realistic. So we actually got a lot of independent academic research saying the pace that you're on, the quickening that's needed, what is a realistic target? There's all sorts banded around. We think ours is achievable. Our progress so far is good, but not good enough. Why do I say it's good? Since 1990, we are halfway there. And actually, we've seen a reduction in carbon emissions of about 4.5% per year. To get to the rest of the target, we need to double that to a compound rate of about, not quite doubling, but get to a compound rate of about 7% a year. So to be totally honest, just like everywhere else in the country, if they were honest, we are not on target, but we are doing pretty well. And the good news is individual authorities' plans were assessed independently about 9 months ago now, and the West Midlands Combined Authority, which I lead, and a number of our authorities in the region were judged to be best in class. So we're in a good position, and we put on the table a plan, some money, and most importantly, coordination across our different areas to see how we could achieve that target. And I'm going to say a little bit about 3 areas: transport, industry, and then we will come to domestic. And the reason for that is 1/3 of our emissions are in transport, 1/3 in industry, and 1/3 in domestic. It varies a bit, different regions of the country, depending on how strong their industrial base is. We are very simple. It's 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. So how are we doing in each, and where do you fit into that, and what issues are there, is perhaps the honest assessment. Transport is actually the best area for us. It's the area where we are making most progress. The reduction is quite strong, and the e-mobility piece is obviously a critical piece of this. So if you think of the investments that have been made in e-mobility, first of all, in public transport, I mean, it's great to have this conversation in Coventry, because our bus fleet, you are leading the way nationally. We won the competition for Coventry to be the all-electric bus city, and you only have to spend a few minutes in the city centre now, and the electric buses come by one after another. A commitment by 2025 to a full electric fleet here, and Coventry will be the first city in the country to do that. Combination of government money, a little from TfWM, huge support from the City Council, and also, critically, the private provider, National Express, Stagecoach, also putting their money on the table. There's e-bikes on the streets, of course. There's e-scooters in Birmingham, not Coventry, although we have our challenges with that. And of course, our rail fleet is also constantly being upgraded as well. The thing to really look forward to is the latest versions of electric trains coming on the cross-city line in Birmingham very shortly, and Avanti also just having phased out their worst polluting diesel trains, the Voyagers, as well. So we're seeing constant progress there. For the anoraks in the room, we still haven't got a solution to the Chiltern fleet on the line up through Warwickshire and into Snowdale, but genuinely good progress on getting better public transport, and then of course making sure the public transport that there is electric rather than anything else. And the big news in Coventry, which I'm sure Jim talked about, so I won't go on to length, is of course the Very Light Rail project, partly funded by the CA, partly by the City Council, the new technology here, and we're both looking forward to getting to the demonstrator track in the city very shortly. Then in industry, we're also making good progress. Obviously, every business has its own targets. They're driving themselves. Let's be clear about that. And lots of you are probably from elements of business where that is happening. But what I'm particularly pleased about is we have been one of the 5 pilot areas for the government's industrial decarbonisation work, focused particularly on the Black Country rather than Coventry and Warwickshire, taking some of our most energy-intensive businesses and saying, how are we actually going to publicly subsidise greater energy efficiency in there? It's far from a done deal, but we're certainly getting, particularly through our Industrial Energy Task Force, ideas in place, examples of companies that have done this to vastly improve their energy efficiency. So that too is on a good trajectory. The biggest challenge though in our numbers is domestic carbon emissions. So the way the projections look, we're on target with transport, we're on our way, industry, we're making relatively little progress with domestic. And this is where some of the biggest public policy issues comes out. Everybody talks about retrofitting housing stock in the West Midlands, 1 million homes. We need to get to net zero to retrofit about 300,000 of them is our estimate. We're doing currently, again, great demonstrator in Coventry and Solihull in Dudley are the 3 areas which are making most progress here. We're making progress in about 1,000 homes this winter just gone, about another 3,000, the funding just having come through, but actually it is relatively tiny, you can see, compared to the target. So my prediction is that will be the toughest area. And again, I will come to some public policy issues. But perhaps the biggest contribution we can make in the West Midlands to this is thinking about the automotive sector and how we're changing that sector. And the good news is, of course, the electrification of that sector is one of our main economic objectives. In our plan for growth, the regional plan for how we grow our economy after COVID, this sector is one of our key targets. And the good news, and again, I suspect Jim talked about some of this, is that that sector is being built rapidly. And this one is focused on Coventry and Warwickshire rather more than Birmingham and the Black Country. And if you look at that cluster that is coming around Coventry, you see the investors that are here already. Obviously, LEVC up at Anstey, obviously JLR saying that Solihull will be the centre of their electric vehicle assembly. We've got the news from Lotus. We've got a number of other inward investors coming, like TVS, for example, doing their electric motorbike assembly and research about to come as well. And then we've got some of the new companies really getting to scale now. A lovely story with Origo making the pods, where they're now a listed company on the AIM market. And you see some other imaginative new startups like Maving, electric bikes being made here, Tevra electric HGVs. And of course, you're seeing lots in the supply chain as well. A wonderful example, Tata Consultancy down in Warwick, employing lots of people specialising in this area. And one of our homegrown success also in Warwick, Comtech, literally 1,000 people looking at this sector there in the consultancy piece. And then one of the real strength, of course, our universities. If you go anywhere in the world, I was out in India last autumn talking about this sector and where it's based, and anyone can see the strength, particularly of Warwick University, in the R&D that really drives this forward. So genuinely, the ingredients for a successful cluster are coming together. The one ingredient we still need, and I know Jim's already talked about this, but I'll add my voice to this, is of course the Gigafactory. I think a bit like the keystone of the bridge for this new cluster. It is critical that we secure that, and I want to be really optimistic about this. We're facing questions at the moment. Well, it looks as though JLR will not, or JLR or Tata will not come here. It's all rumour what they're going to do at the moment. If I may be honest, the government's leaked the story twice, but Tata haven't confirmed anything yet. But let's assume the rumours are correct. So they go to Somerset. It's obviously important that they're there rather than in a European country, but it means we have to find a different investor for the Coventry site, and we will find one, because the we need to move on in our thinking about this. Everyone thinks it just has to be an automotive company. Not true. If you look at the biggest battery manufacturers around the world, they are experts in that, and they sell to lots of different customers. And my prediction is we will end up with one of those consolidators there. And it is genuinely true that those conversations are at a good state at the moment. So I am extremely determined with all the members of the partnership, and indeed confident that we will land that, and it's really critical that we do. So that's the background of the cluster. Whether you fit in that, I'm not going to suggest that I understand ZPN's business model better than you do, but what I do understand is that the things you're thinking about, mobile charging, really critical for so many applications, the whole issue of storage rather than manufacture, are really important. How you get to rapid and ultra rapid as adoption grows, critical. And so you are thinking about some of the issues that will drive this adoption forward and remove some of the barriers. And I love the idea that on the side of some of your products, it actually says very proudly, made in Coventry, and I've got my own picture standing next to that. So obviously you're in a good place there. So what are the public policy issues then to get people thinking at the end? Because this isn't going to naturally happen. There do need to be some decisions. And I've written down 6, which I think are still at play, really. The first one, and probably no surprises for calling this one out, is definitely the question of how much public subsidy is the national government willing to put on the table to be competitive in this sector. The rumours are there of what's been put on the table for Tata. It's a very substantial sum of money, if it's true. We've obviously seen, it's in the public domain, what's been put on the table for the relatively small Nissan Gigafactory up in the northeast. But those numbers are no more than the going rate internationally. If the Tata one is true, it takes us to a new level of public subsidy. And so actually, I think the really good thing about this is it says that the British government is prepared to compete internationally with what's been done in Spain, in Germany, in Hungary, in Poland, and even more extreme what's happening in the US. But we do need to see that consistently happen if we are going to be serious global players in this new technology going forward. I'm much more optimistic about that than I was 3 months ago. And if I may be slightly political, the advent of Jeremy Hunt as Chancellor has definitely made a difference to this, because he has been here, walked the site of Coventry, understands the need for these subsidies for us to be competitive. So that's the first really big issue. The second issue is obviously around adoption by the public. Now, we've seen some good progress here, but our tax incentives are actually very small compared to some European countries in terms of what's going on. And where in particular I'd call out, there's a very live issue about taxi grants. It's helped LEVC in their infancy. They've now been removed, and there's going to be a very interesting debate, particularly for heavy goods vehicles, about how the tax incentive system can deal with that, because obviously the business case is a lot less good for the heavy goods vehicles. There's definitely some issue there. The next one I want to call out is actually about land pricing and what public subsidy can be used there. And we're actually right at the vortex of this at the moment in the combined authority. So to have a sort of charging infrastructure of the quality that we need to use some of your products, the CA is committed, public money, the leaders have all agreed this, that we'll have a network of ultra-fast charging stations like petrol stations at key sites across the region. A couple of sites in Coventry are likely to be the first that we actually deliver on. But we're competing for those sites when the market is still immature with lots of other land users. So again, there is an interesting public policy issue about how much public subsidy is necessary to always kickstart, get that flywheel turning there. And as I say, we're right in the middle of that. Then there's this one about skills development. Again, we don't have all the skills for this sector at the moment. How much public money is being put on the table to encourage colleges to put what's right in there? And I'll just get you to think about this through the lens of the retrofit piece. We thought, get a few test cases for retrofit, the industry will grow on its own. But actually, that's not happened because it's not yet consistent in supply and in demand. Some of the college providers aren't yet doing the courses we would want. They're not subscribers we would want. So again, there's a question of how we're going to stimulate that market to really get that established. There's then obviously a really critical question about the national grid, its sufficiency, how quickly people can get connected to it. I've got companies ringing me up all the time saying, waiting for a grid connection, it's 5 years, it's not good enough, it's not competitive. So what are we going to do about that? Do we just accept that or not? We can't accept it. So again, we're saying, what's the role for regions in helping with their city councils, of course, helping plan that grid structure? One of the things we asked for in, slightly technical point, our devolution deal was a formal role in that. It wasn't granted yet, but I'm prepared to commit that it does come eventually, because that's got to move much faster than it is at the moment. And then the last big one, of course, is how much cash is the public sector going to put on the table to encourage retrofitting? I gave you the numbers, it's small fry. Everyone celebrates saying we're doing these small test cases, brilliant, but it is not going to be achievable that the public sector subsidises the numbers 300,000. It's not going to happen. 300,000 homes here, multiply that up across the country. So the real question there is, what's the private sector model to actually get a return on that retrofitting? How does the public and the private sector share the risk and the reward? None of our banks have yet come up with a solution to that. So there's definitely an issue for government about how they work with the private sector to do that. So those are 6 issues that come out. So my conclusion would be saying thank you for what you're doing, your stimuli, and hopefully by driving on the ground, you can encourage those of us with that public responsibility to think about how we address those bigger issues that hopefully will make you successful. Thank you very much indeed. Very happy to take a few questions.
Have a take a couple of
Yeah, a
questions.
couple of questions. Yeah,
Anyone here want to take a question? I could maybe ask one first.
please.
So when you're talking about subsidies,
Yes.
how do you see the subsidies affecting things like asset finance? Because the asset finance market hates high capital things because they're always relying on other people's balance sheets. How do you see that happening? Can you talk to Jeremy Hunt and give him a bit?
I think it depends what you mean by the question, because there's 2 different things here. So I was talking with Jeremy Hunt about the subsidy to an investor coming in to choose to make their investment here rather than abroad. I do think that point is landed. We have only got, though, £1 billion in the Automotive Transformation Fund, which so far has provided all these. So there is a relatively urgent decision to see that number grow from Treasury. That was the Jeremy Hunt piece. There is, though, a much wider question in what you are talking about, in that there are actually very different business models here. And that's, in a sense, my last point, being cheeky about the banks, because they have got to become much more comfortable with the sort of business models that you are talking about. Now, I don't actually think that's a conversation directly with the Chancellor, if I'm very honest. I think there's actually a question for the financial markets about how they're going to respond to the new opportunities here. Now, I have tried to have the conversation with HSBC, with all the senior people, but nobody, unless anyone will correct me, and I'd love to be corrected on this, frankly, no one I see really coming forward from the financial sector to say we see a sustainable opportunity here, particularly in retrofit, to get the returns that we want. So there are 2 different parts to this debate. One's a straight public subsidy, one's a financial markets issue.
Fantastic. Anyone else got a question?
I can't believe it. I've stunned everyone into silence, or bored you, one or the other. One or the other. Anything you want to nudge me on, though? It doesn't have to be a question. Any observation? Do you think my assessment of that is right, or anything you'd like to just mark the card on?
Andy, are there any moves in your discussions with Jeremy Hunt and therefore maybe the Treasury for them to re-look at tax breaks that have been taken away?
For adoption of electric vehicles.
And also for reliefs for organisations to invest in those capital projects?
Yeah.
Because that's quite cumbersome at the moment.
So the answer is not yet. However, again, this is where I say I am much more optimistic than I was. So let me explain what I mean by that and connecting it back. And I'll be straightforward on the politics of it here. When Theresa May was Prime Minister and Greg Clark was Business Secretary and Philip Hammond was Chancellor, there were effectively a lot of encouragement to particular industrial sectors. Now that could be a tax subsidy for adoption, it could be particular investment incentives. And that was because they believed in an industrial strategy. So do I. The West Midlands has its 8 priority clusters that we want to get behind, and you can see from what I've said, we don't have the cash that national government does, but you can do things to sort of stimulate the sectors. I fervently believe in that. We then went to a period, and I'll be straightforward about it, with Boris Johnson, where there was no belief in a national industrial strategy. And steadily, these things were removed. And Jacob Rees-Mogg, who was business secretary, just said, don't believe in it. I'm a free market economics person, don't believe in it. And we now find ourselves in a position where Europe and the USA are putting huge subsidies in, and we have to compete. Now, the reason I'm an optimist is that Jeremy has come in his budget in March. He said there are 5 priority sectors for us to compete, 5 new sectors. MedTech was obviously probably the biggest and most exciting. This was the second. And he has commissioned work in the Treasury about what is required to up Britain's performance in these areas. So he's far from a laissez-faire do nothing. And so the whole question of what is the right public use of money for stimulating those sectors is back in discussion in the Treasury. And I expect, he's been very clear with me when he came to Coventry for the discussion, I'm expecting in the autumn statement we will see the outcome of that work. Yeah.
Anyone else?
Nope. There you are. You can get on with your conference.
They're all very polite.
Oh, there you go.
You got a
Or one or the other. Okay, all right. Okay, thank you all, and most importantly, good luck to you all in what you're doing. Thank you.
Okay, hello. Good morning to everybody. This is my name is Shuji Shiraki from Beyond. I'd like to introduce to you about Beyond and our fleet electrification, let's say, solutions that we offer. I hope the screen is visible to all of you. I'm assuming it is. Okay. So also, thanks for having me at the ZPN Energy to the event. And I'm also aware that we also have our vehicle exhibited also in the event. So for those of you who haven't seen the vehicles, please go and enjoy. There's a gentleman called Ian Armstrong from the International Motors, our partner, also there. Also, there's our UK sales manager from Beyond, Simon Curtin, also at the show. So they'll be at your disposal. So first of all, to explain to you, introduce you to you about what Beyond is. So we basically originated ourselves from the as an electric light commercial vehicle manufacturer. It was a startup originated from the Aachen University in Germany. Then this company was also acquired by Deutsche Post DHL Group, who was basically looking to electrify their fleet already from the early 2010s. And they acquired the company, they scaled the business. Currently, there's about 22,000, over 22,000 units already on the road, mainly in Germany. We also have several units also in Japan, also in United Kingdom. And so we have been already operating the electric fleet since 2014, which amounts up to 400 million kilometers of electric mileage already driven, CO2 also 78,000 tons saved. We also have experience in electrifying depots of over 3,000, let's say, depots. Now, Beyond is a startup company focused around this last mile transportation space. And Beyond has acquired the business from Deutsche Post DHL in early 2022. And we're now scaling the business in Europe, including the UK, also to the Americas, and also to Asia. Just to also let you know where and how our vehicles are used, it's basically focused on the last mile, let's say, transportation for goods. What you see on the post and parcel, this is the use case for Deutsche Post DHL. It's being used every day to deliver the post and parcels. In Japan, we have a customers who's carrying dry and cold frozen goods. Also, it's used on the e-commerce. In UK, we got the milk delivery company carrying 200 of our units carrying the milk every day, every morning. Also in the Netherlands, we have like supermarket also using our vehicles, and also municipalities as well. Now, the key learnings that we have gained in the past, let's say 7 to 8 years of electrifying the fleet, is the notion that just selling the vehicle is not enough. and particularly to the electric, let's say the fleet customers that are going electric, they typically need to think much wider than just replacing an ICE diesel vehicle. So what we are basically offering based on our accumulated knowledge and experience is a full suite of fleet electrification solutions, starting from the electrification, the planning. This is supporting the customers do the entire, let's say, the supporting the route analysis, the power demand analysis, the TCO, total cost of ownership simulation, also offering the most suitable electric vehicles for the customer's use case. We also have multiple certified partners in the charging infrastructure space that basically go and design the most suitable right-sized charging infrastructure for the customer's depots. The deployment support is more about onboarding the drivers, the depot managers, making sure that they are trained properly. Number 5 is more about the service network, making sure that there's a scheduled maintenance to keep the uptime high. And even in the event that the downtime occurs, that the vehicles is back up on the road so that you don't lose any revenues. 6 and 7 and 8, these are our proprietary digital solutions that we have developed together with Deutsche Post to basically manage the uptime of the fleet, which is number 6. We're also developing the solutions to enhance the productivity of the drivers through an integrated app. And energy and charge management is a software that basically manages the energy flow so that we make sure that the power peak doesn't go through the peak demand, and we levelizes basically the energy cost throughout the day. And we offer all these solutions in one integrated price, all in one pricing, either on a monthly per unit basis, or we can also design it to the customer on a per mile basis. Now, it's a little bit difficult to grasp if you just hear this out. So what I want to show you now is actually a video of how this Beyond Electros offer actually works. I hope the video is running in your screen. And let me try to explain this to you. This is also a video that we have announced in the commercial vehicle show in Birmingham in April. So the process that we take is we take one depot of the customer, and then we basically run like the fleet electrification survey. We try to understand the current uptime, the current customer's use case, and thereby understanding the power demand. We then offer let's say the electric vehicles from the Beyond portfolio that basically meets the customer's use case, okay? And then we engage the charging partners to conduct this charging infrastructure design. The key point is how to minimize the capital expenditure from the customer. So making sure that we have the right size, let's say, chargers, and also making sure that there's no utility upgrade will be necessary. The deployment support is more about making sure that the vehicles are on time, the chargers are installed also on time. It requires a very strong orchestrated coordination to make that happen. And we also support the customers in the onboarding process of the software. We also train the depot managers in how to utilize these softwares. And we also provide trainings to the drivers in how to, for example, use the recuperation brakes effectively so that they can manage the energy cost low. Our vehicles are all equipped with a telematics control unit, which basically collects the data real time. So we basically store that in our Beyond's back end. And we, for example, use this to make sure that the preventive maintenance is always done. We also try to monitor which are let's say, the vehicles that needs proactive actions in terms of servicing. And then for the softwares, we basically have one software for the fleet managers that manages the fleet health, as what we call it, meaning that keeping the uptime high, ensuring which vehicles is charged, where the vehicles are currently located, when was it last used. And then we can also show basically at the fleet level and also at the vehicle level. So this is the software that is also being used in the Deutsche Post fleet right now. We're also developing the solution for the drivers, where the drivers could actually see their vehicle. They can also see how well they're driving their electric vehicle, and they can also do like a daily checkup of the vehicle using this app. Typically in the last mile transportation use case, the vehicles come back late afternoon or so, but we use this, let's say, the charging scheduler function and also the energy management function to avoid like an energy peak going up at the most expensive rate of the day. and we basically make sure that the energy cost is levelized. So we basically call this all these different sets of solution as the electros to support customers increase their uptime, the productivity, and the total cost of ownership. So I hope this video kind of gave you kind of picture of what's the process that we take in actually offering this electro solutions. So a little bit going more into the detail about each of the solutions, kind of like trying to classify them into the vehicles, charging software, and the energy. This is the, let's say, the sets of solutions of the vehicles we have. Again, we have the version with the box in the middle with around 125-mile driving range. This is actually more than sufficient in the last mile use cases typically. Then we basically have a cab chassis version that is more at the, let's say, a little bit higher in terms of the chassis height, and the one that calls Giga Pure is more lower, which makes it easier for the drivers to get in and also get out into the cargo that you will be able to customize and design. So all these vehicles are currently produced in Germany, in Düren. So this is a made in, let's say, Europe, made in Germany product. And we are also developing, having the readiness for the right-hand drive, which should be coming also within this year. So this is also the product that you will be able to see outside in the venue with our colleagues, okay? In terms of the charging infrastructure, so we've explained to you that we've already electrified several thousand of Deutsche Post depots. And through that, we basically learn that each depot is very specific. Each location, warehouse is very, it has its own limitations in terms of the power distributions and whatnot. So it's really important that we take step-by-step and depot-by-depot approach in actually laying out the charging infrastructure that is most suitable for the customer. Also in terms of the, let's say, the user cycles, but also in terms of cost. These are just showing different types of, let's say, the installation types. The wall-mounted, which is the most typical one. The pole-mounted one is if you have more like a vast land, and then this is like a where you cannot hang on a wall, you would typically go for this. Overhang is like a type where the fleet operator wants to secure the maximum space for their vehicles. And this is also more from a usability perspective, the most, let's say, the convenient. There's always obviously pros and the cons of each of the types, but our style is that we work together with the charging partners, also with the utility companies, to make sure that the customers gets the most suitable, let's say, the infrastructure that they need. In terms of the software that we have also demonstrated in the video, this is kind of like the structure of how our, let's say, the system backend and the front end is structured. So as I told you, the electric RV on vehicle is equipped with a telematics control unit, which basically collects all the data. And also, as a matter of fact, in Germany, our Mercedes, Volkswagen, Ford vehicles for Deutsche Post, they're also equipped with our telematics control unit. So the key message for many of the fleet operators is that our software is brand agnostic. It can also be basically collecting data from different vehicles through the means of API or from the telematics integration. So this is really a EV-specific, brand agnostic software that the customers can enjoy, which the data we collect will be used to power the driver's application for the drivers, fleet data management for the fleet managers to manage their uptime, and also energy and charge management more for the facility managers to make sure whether the charging is functioning properly and also if the energy is being saved. Yeah. We also have energy storage solutions, which I want to elaborate on the next page, is because our vehicles have already been operating since 2014, let's say 15-ish, we already have 7 to 8 years of life in the first life, and we actually have in practice, in reality, the first life battery coming back, and we are actually using those battery as a second life battery to package them into electrical energy storage. And we have already been commercializing this product in some of the depots for the Deutsche Post. And this is also supporting Deutsche Post, let's say, the sustainability agenda to make their carbon neutral depots, so that it becomes like it functions like a microgrid through collecting the power through a solar panels, then storing those energies in the storage, then using that stored energy to power let's say, the building and also the electric vehicles during the most, let's say, the expensive time of the day. This business model basically also drastically reduces the energy cost, and it also basically supports the decarbonization of the operations. So we also see many customers also going into this space. Our experience also tells us that many customers, they first want to electrify their fleet, and then more they, let's say, operate their electric fleet, they get more interested in testing out like a new models, like solar panels, electrical energy storage, and so on. And our solutions are also designed in a way that it's future-proof, so that the customers can start small, but they can also then scale it to a more greener solutions over time. That's how we basically have also gained experience in the 22,000 units fleet, that the solutions needs to be evolving, and it also, and the customers' needs will also evolve, and we will also need to be accommodating those needs over time in the long term. In terms of UK, where which is our strategic core market, I just want to also re-emphasize that we have signed a partnership with the International Motors. We are very proud to be partnering with such a prestige company in the UK, and they will be the one distributing and also servicing our vehicle in the United Kingdom. We've also partnered with the EO Charging. They're more fleet charging infrastructure company that offers like a charging hardware installations, also the O&M, operational management services, to like a big fleet operator like Amazon. So they will also be the one that will be supporting us in offering this electro solutions in a one-stop turnkey solutions manner. I hope that kind of gave you a good snapshot of what we are, who we are, what we do, how we do it. And I'm really sorry that I could not be with you on site, but we got Ian Armstrong and also Simon Curtin from Beyond team there. So maybe you would be able to catch up with them in case you have more further interests. So thank you very much. That was it from my side.
Well, as I said earlier on, welcome to the factory. Obviously, for those of you who arrived after the event, I'm James Foster. I'm the CEO of ZPN Energy. So what am I doing today? So I'm basically announcing the launch of our new charge post, which is this large blue thing next to me, but I'll come on to that in a second. So the first thing is really, I know they've both left, they've all run off to more important things. Andy Street and Jim O'Boyle, real credit to the team here to get them here, and you know, because they're pivotal to what goes on inside Coventry. My goal in this, when I came up with the idea, was to engage us looking out and doing something positive. Because it's too easy, as I said earlier, for those who weren't here, to be insular, be in your own space, deal with your own customers, deal with your own suppliers, and not extend out. Very much too easy. So the advantage of creating INEED, which, as I said earlier on today, is an official day now, so it will reoccur this time every year, infinitum. And what we do with it, it's actually not just for ZPN, it's actually for the people that are here. So whether that's, you know, Motability are here, Horizon HEV are here, Eon are here, you know, there's a whole list of Penzo. You know, I really genuinely appreciate you coming and joining us today. And if we can make this an event that happens every year, you know, we can engage, we can get more things which I'm concerned about, which is fundamentally more sales. You know, that's the bottom line. That's why we're all in business. You know, if that works for everyone, brilliant. So doors open. You can always come and visit the factory whenever you want. Team are always here. If you pass in, drop in for a coffee. More than happy to have you. So always welcome. So for those of you who don't know, I took over as CEO of ZPN about 18 months ago, a bit more than that ago. I took over a company which had a real heritage in IP, R&D. If you're an accountant, you look at our accounts, you will see just how many R&D tax credits we've had. We've made a good job of getting them. However, as a business, you can't live off R&D tax credits. You can't live off investors like me. I invested in the company 2 years ago. You know, you have to get out there and you have to commercialise the business, and that's the prime job that I've done. So the intrinsic IP that ZPN Energy has is about energy storage and how you manage energy storage and how you maximise the available energy for the task in hand. So what's the task? So the task might be EV charging, it might be running a building, it could be anything, right? We're agnostic, we don't care, right? At the end of the day, energy is the new commodity. You know, whether that's you're unable to get a grid connection or you're able to get the grid connection, is the grid connection big enough? Or are you going to have to wait, as I heard 2 weeks ago, till 2043 for grid reinforcement? You know, that's the longest I've heard. You know, there might be some people in this room who have heard longer dates than that, but I've heard plenty of dates that are into the 2030s, and even that's too long, and Andy Street raised that as an issue, and it requires central government. It's not something that can necessarily be done just by us, if you like. It does require some engagement. So what's that meant for us? So in terms of our energy storage, our business is now split broadly into 3 things. One is EV charging, predominantly rapid and ultra rapid charging. I'll come on to in a second. The second one is integrated and networked energy. What does that mean? So that basically means where you take a building like this, you cover it in solar, you cover the car park in solar, whatever. You might have a wind turbine, you might have a hydroelectric power, obviously not here, but you might then have energy storage, and then you integrate that with your EV charging. And the challenge in that is because if your energy supply isn't big enough, well, how are your staff, how are your suppliers, how are the customers around you, how are you going to have enough energy to run your building? But more importantly, I believe, as a CEO of a business, there's 2 things that are important. One is saving money and the other one is making money. Now, if you integrate that system correctly, you actually change your EV charging from being a cost to being a revenue earner. And I'll come on to what that actually means. But, you know, we've got a building here, we've got a big car park, it's got 140 odd spaces. There's nothing to stop the public coming here and using the facilities that we can provide here or any other building. But fundamentally, you need enough energy. But where does that energy come from? So you've got a grid that's relatively constrained, okay? There's plenty of energy, it's just not in quite the right places. So what do you do with that? So what we talk about is harvesting of energy. So if we had solar on the roof, energy storage out the back, we've got a demo unit out the back of the building if you want to look at one. What you can basically do is harvest the energy into the storage and then deploy it when you need it. Because EV charging in particular tends to have peak demand periods. It doesn't have a constant demand. So in businesses, it tends to be 9 AM and 5 PM because people run out and think they need to charge. in the sort of public world, people are tending to charge vehicles sort of when they're travelling. So we have a rush hour, which is the beginning of the day and the end of the day. It happens if you look at service stations as well. But you've got 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Most businesses, like here, we don't have anyone here for a weekend. So you've got 24 hours over a weekend where you could be harvesting energy and storing it. And the best form of energy is the stuff you A, harvest, because it's cheap, and B, that you can deploy when you need it, and it will come at the cheapest, lowest cost. And that is the difference when you apply it. So you can apply that to something like a supermarket. So if you apply that to a supermarket, how many supermarkets have you been in where they have very little EV charging, very little renewables, but yet the site could be more than 10 acres in size? Yeah, we see it every day. And then we hear complaints that there isn't enough land for charging infrastructure. You know, there's a big opportunity, but that's one element. It doesn't matter whether it's a shed like this or a supermarket or a, you know, farms. You know, there's no reason for rural spaces to not have enough energy, but there is a pressure to keep stuff coming from the grid and not harvest from what's around you from the cheapest localist source. So that's what networked energy really is. And then the third part of what we've got is mobile charging. We are the inventors, despite what other people claim, we're the inventors of mobile EV charging. We invented it back in 2014, but the first one arrived in 2014. It was created by our founder, who was a mad scientist, and he came up with it. And there's a trailer out there, which you see has got Zachinamo written on the side of it. It has lithium titanate batteries in it. It is designed to be fast charged and emptied and actually towed behind an EV. Obviously, things have moved on. But now we have ZPN and we have something called ZPN drop. And that's the ability to deploy energy at point of peak demand. So that's either someone who lives in a flat, how do they get a charger? We can deliver that energy to them. That means a service station doesn't need a big connection. In the summer, it's in the southwest. I know Gordano services, hellhole, right? You could actually deploy a containerized storage of energy that comes from any source. It could be from a local, you know, solar farm. It could be from a waste to energy plant. It could be anywhere. But you can deploy that energy. And what our clear technology advantage is the ability to manage that, collect it, harvest it, and manage it agnostic of where that energy comes from. So I will roll back to the EV charger, and I need a volunteer.
Yeah, I'll volunteer. As long as you're not going to electrocute. Unless, of course, that was a setup for one of your team.
Oh, you never know. So, and who are you?
My name is Alan Blunt. I'm from Conduit.
Oh, good. Right. Lovely to meet you. So, we got a victim.
It's not going to make my hair stand on end, is it?
I think it's a bit late.
Yeah.
Right. So, this is the new ZPN HUBZ 2 charger. It looks quite simple, but it's actually surprisingly clever, because this is the first EV charger that's been marinized at the point of design. So the electronics are in one half of the box, and the cable is in the other half of the box. And there's a good reason for that. That almost all failures of EV chargers are because of humidity inside the box. So when they trip, it's usually because they've got a humidity sensor or something similar that's tripping. So why is this better? So you may have seen around the factory our old charger, and we were the first people to have a PAS 1899 compliant charger. That means it was disability compliant before the regulations were even written. We are still the only manufacturer of a fully compliant, disability-friendly charger. And you can talk about disability, and I know Motability chaps are here, okay? I see disability as about accessibility, not necessarily about what people can't do, but it's about accessibility to the market as a whole. Because someone might have a disability, but the other person who might have a lack of accessibility might be the van driver who's doing a last mile journey, and he can't get into the space, so he can't do his journey. He ends up with the vehicle being recovered. But he has essentially the same challenges as the person with the disability. They're just in a different, you know, all disabilities aren't visible, as they say. You know, what we did from day one was the screen height was the lowest in the market. It's visible from all angles. The cable itself, which is round here, is the lightest in the market. And that's where my big tin comes in. So if you like to come around here,
Your side?
you can come around here. So, live demo. So, as you can see, we have a cable that feeds in and out. If you'd like to grab it.
Yep.
So you pull on it slightly.
Yes.
So if you pull on the cable slightly,
Oh, the actual cable itself?
yeah,
Oh, okay.
so it continues to be around.
There you go. So, first thing is the cable goes in and out. Number of reasons for that. One, vandalism. So one of the big problems with EV chargers in street environments is being vandalised. Okay. Second thing is copper theft. So we put the cable inside the box so you can't steal it. Okay. But actually, it has no trip hazard. If you go to almost any EV charge station, and it is a massive issue of trip hazard. There's cables all over the floor. Cables get damaged. They get dragged over people's cars. They get covered in grit, which you then drag over your bonnet or wherever else you go. Now the next thing about that, is that heavy? Okay, so this charger can run in this format up to just under 150 kilowatts. So it's essentially an ultra rapid charger. We've got a new cable which can go up to 400 amps, which could take you up into the sort of 350, 375. Bend it around like that. Fully. Bend it around. So anyone who drives an EV, you know, you can see how bendy that cable is. You know, this, when you're trying to put it into the side of a car, just take it off you, how many people with an EV have struggled to bend the cable, which is too short, to get it into the side of the car? You can operate it one-handed. You can bend it. Thank you. You know, they're those types of features which are not revolutionary, but from a user experience, make the thing far more reliable and prevent damage to the charger, means the charger reliability will be greater. The other features of the unit is we are the only people that pretty much run tap and go payments. So you could just walk up to it, plug your car in, tap it with your debit card, drive off. Don't need an app, don't need anything else, just use it and go. Really simple usability thing. And then the last thing, just feed it in. There you go. So that cable goes in entirely hidden. So when you're actually using these in a marinized environment, which we're doing some work with Aqua Superpower, one of the things is you can put this on a pontoon and the cable doesn't dangle in the water, which is obviously not conducive to good charging. So what's also good about those cables is they're pretty much unique to us. They're uncooled up to 350 kilowatts rather. And what that means is the cable's lighter, bendier. It can be used in environments which are much more challenging than a normal EV charger. But the best thing about actually EV chargers, and I mentioned energy storage, all of them are integrated with energy storage. So what we do when we're charging is harvesting energy that can be used at the point of peak demand. And they're also networked. So if you've seen them out there, you will see some sort of boxes that are 2 meters long, and about so high. They basically sit behind. You can distribute them anywhere on the site, so you don't need big containers of storage. Distribute them around. If battery number 1 is empty and you're using charger number 1, it will take energy from battery number 5 or any other battery in the link. You can link thousands and something of them together. I'm sure Ben will tell me how many. Plenty. We've never done one that big, but that's what can physically be done. So, last thing, OCCP2. From the outset, from design, we've been at that level from day one, even ahead of the spec from the Open Charge Alliance. So it's an important thing. So key advantages of this: grid constraint. We can, for every one normal rapid charger, you could fit about 3 of these. So when you hear of CPOs claiming, oh, I can only put 12 on site, it could actually be 36. That is a really important message to the market. You know, because existing rapid chargers work by taking the available grid supply and dividing it by the number of appliances. It works just like Wi-Fi. The more you attach, the slower the charge. Simple as that. And what CPOs tend to call it is load balancing. It's not. It's basically contention, the same as you'd get on your broadband network. And this unlocks that equation of enabling more chargers in more places. So where will you see this? So the big kind of announcement for us is we were recently awarded the contract to provide EV charging to Network Rail. That means the first 85 sites will be rolled out over the next 2 years. Some significant milestones in that process. So the first is it will make us one of the largest ultra-rapid charging networks. All chargers will be ultra-rapid from right out the door. Potentially, and we don't know the exact numbers on this yet, it also potentially makes us one of the largest grid services players, because we will have a networked energy storage network across 90 sites, totaling multiple megawatts of energy. And for us, that's a key revenue driver, you know, but it also gives us a kind of an opportunity to provide that access to the grid to drive further sort of energy integration in the local areas in which they work. The second place you'll start to see these, I mentioned Aqua Superpower. We're working with Aqua Superpower on the Electric Seaway, which is the application of grid-constrained boat charging across the south coast. Only a very small contract, but it is part of electrification. Isn't just cars, it's HGVs, it's boats, buses, wherever you want to go. So, and the bigger the demand, the more challenging that EV charging is. The requirements for it. And to be honest, cars are the easy bit. And the complicated bit is HGV, but these will become a key part of HGV when they're in their 350 format. And that is an ongoing discussion with bus companies and others. And actually, in terms of boats, we are talking to a number of providers on the Thames. We're looking at 2 megawatt charging applications from 125 kVA electrical supplies. That is, and making them serviceable over 6 times a week. That is a, significant challenge. So the last point in this, and the key takeout from this, is that I mentioned that EV doesn't have to be a cost. It can be a revenue driver. If you take the environment in which we work in here and you apply this in a commercial environment of the solar storage and EV charging, and you make your EV charging public, if you had 6 of these and they were 50 kilowatt each and they were used 30% of the time at current rates, you would make somewhere between 700 and 850,000 pounds a year on a approximately £1 million investment. That's you know, and have more energy and pay up to 30% less for the energy that you use in your building. That's big numbers. And it's part of what Andy Street was talking about. How do you get the public sector and the private sector to work together? And it's understanding how this works in that public sector. Because you apply that at a council office, you don't need to charge a small council tax. Simple as that. So key takeout, 6 of those, best part of £1 million a year. But thank you for your time. Really appreciate you all being here today. Anyone got any questions?
Through the day, you've got different tariffs for the electric per kilowatt. How do you do that? Do you put better, like so between 1 and 3 in the morning? It's probably the cheapest price per kilowatt. Is that sort of in your software that it will
Absolutely.
it will fill the battery up 10 times?
Absolutely, that's called peak shaving. So all of our software is designed to take it from the sunniest day, the cheapest tariff, whatever. It's all designed about getting energy at its cheapest point. We, you know, if it was a very sunny day, you might just fill your batteries with solar energy, if that's what would get you enough, and then just top it up from the grid after.
Only solar, so if it's not south facing, you're probably not getting them.
It depends. Yeah, there's location implications of it, but we, you know, we're talking with local authorities in the northwest, so up your part of the world, and in those where the solar doesn't work, we're actually talking about a 3 megawatt wind turbine because it's on the side of the Mersey. So that is provides the same thing, just in a smaller package, but it has its own implications in terms of planning and other things. But you take the energy from where you can get it first before you buy it from the grid, because it makes your margin bigger, particularly if you're selling energy. That answer your question?
So when you're selling it, are you selling it at a fixed price, or are you going to try to maximise use while you're selling it cheaper in off-peak times? So it gets you more usage on peak times, or is it just a fixed price?
The modelling at the moment for Network Rail is we have to stay within 5% of the average in the market. We've agreed that with them principally because there is a concern, and it's partly my concern, that you end up in a situation where, you know, when you get big variations in petrol pricing, what you could end up with is a huge traffic jam out of the railway station, and everyone misses their train. So that is possible within the software. Yeah. The question is a more site-specific one, that you wouldn't want to create a traffic jam. That, you know, we've seen queues at Tesla stations, for example. You know, peak point.
Probably wouldn't stop working service stations, or you would stop really seem to work.
I couldn't possibly comment about other people who make chargers.
So what size battery would do that? Would it be 50 kilowatts?
They start at 50 kilowatt, yeah, and you can containerize them, you can have them distributed, you can have them wherever you want. Normally, you get one of these and a battery pack, which is in 50, it can go up to 75 kilowatt in the battery. But of course, if you've got 5 chargers, you've got 5 lots of that, you have 1/4 of a megawatt of energy storage. So depending on your demand, you manage it accordingly.
And you have the backup of the network.
You then have the network backup behind it.
By the energy tripled.
Yes. So all of the energy storage, we've always worked in a charge and discharge simultaneously format. So whereas a lot of, if you look at, I can give you a battery backed up charger comparison, which is Spark Charge in the US. What they have is they have a box like this and they have a battery in it. When the battery is dead, the charge is dead. You get whatever comes out of the grid, or a proportion of what comes out of the grid. If you, with ours, because they're linked together, we charge the battery, not the charger. So the charger is very much a slave to the battery. So the batteries are there as a store.
On the screen, you've got 20% and 50%. What's that mean?
That's just basically to select how much energy. That's just the test screen. So that's just a demonstration. The interactive screen is a bit more the customer use.
Battery just looks at 80%.
Yeah.
How long?
But on all of our chargers, if you look at ZapMe as well as these, with ZapMe you can choose whether you do a percentage of fill or a fixed amount of kilowatts, or you can just press it to just keep going until it's done. Ed?
Do you have any ambitions in the sort of home or consumer space, or is it really a commercial application?
It is a commercial application. We have recently announced that we can convert ZPNs to become rapid chargers for the home. So we are the world first in that. It is a 50 kilowatt battery to enable charging in the home environment, and that's predominantly come from housing developers at the top end who are concerned that if you have a normal house with a single phase supply and you put a 7 kilowatt charger on the outside of the house, that there isn't physically enough hours in the day to charge 2 cars. And if you, let's say it's a £1 million house and the person's got 2 Taycans or 2 Teslas, you know, you could probably barely fill one of them in the hours that you've got. So it's come from that environment. And the idea that there needs to be a change in packaging of the way the properties have their energy packaged into them. But there is obviously a retrofit market for, there's 26 million addresses that need something.
With the network rail pieces, if you've got the back office software with the dashboards, they have to be managed centrally across, because clearly that's quite a large geography and lots of DNOs. But that's your network, or the client's network that they're managing themselves.
Yeah, the software for the business was developed more than 2 years ago, and it was designed to run multiple network charge points across multiple locations. That's what it was designed for. There's some more development work going on at the moment, and the next part of that will be an app so that you can find out where they are and book spaces and stuff like that. Because obviously in railway stations, they might be relatively high demand. So it's about how do people access them as easily as possible. And that's part of the next development. But the underlying software can run energy storage, the charger, everything that goes involved with it. Anyone else?
On the network rail one, and obviously I know it depends on the site, but how many charges, like on average per site, do you think?
So we've spec'd it at 5 ultra rapid chargers per site. Based on demand, we will adjust that accordingly. We were having this discussion yesterday that we can, as part of the deal, we can pick and choose where they are. So we get a really good visibility of all the sites, and then for each site we will do a marketing survey of those, and then decide, you know, which site we use, because actually you want it where people are going to use it. That said, you know, if you've got a high demand site, you might not have room for more chargers. So the question is then do you just put it as the next nearest one that's close by and almost create its own little ecosystem, if you like, between the 3 or 4 local stations. But that's once we've got the 90 out there, then we'll see where we get to. 15 of those sites are UK-wide bus and taxi ranks. So they include places like Paddington, and how we manage taxi charging is going to be quite interesting based on developments with taxis at the moment, and also bus charging. Bus charging is all over the place at the moment because of people like BYD trying to control the ecosystem. So it will be an open network, probably CCS charging or something similar, based on where that goes. Any other questions? No? Okay, well, thank you for your time. If you've got think about something afterwards or want to come and ask me a question, then just grab me, I'm wandering around. I believe the food truck is now live outside, so anyone who wants food. Yeah, and the next up in the presentation is Motability. What time are they?
5 minutes.
In about 5 minutes.
Shall we go to the back
Should
we reconvene in 15 then?
Yeah, so 15, 20 minutes, and then Motability up.
What's on the menu, horse?
Who knows? It's in a horse box, so it could be anything.
Horse.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. Okay. Hello, everybody. Nice to be here. I'm Ed. I work at Motability Operations. And we run one of the largest EV fleets in the country. And we provide car to anybody who qualifies through certain allowances that are given out by central government. So I'm going to talk a little bit about who we are, and I'm going to talk a little bit about accessible charging and how you can design chargers for accessibility. And then I'm going to talk a little bit, although I'm not going to go too far into this because I'm in a room full of experts, on the opportunity we see around energy and EV and what that can mean for our customers in the future. So, first of all, who are we? So you might have heard of Motability or the Motability scheme. I'm from Motability Operations. I just want to explain this a little bit because it causes quite a lot of confusion. Motability is a charity with a mandate from government to provide a car scheme. The mandate says there's no competition. It also says we don't pay VAT on vehicles, which gives us a competitive advantage. The reason why there's no competition is because it allows us to be really, really price competitive, and it also allows us to cross-subsidize people with more complex requirements and people who have no requirements at all, so we can offer a car to everybody. The whole idea of the scheme is universality. Motability Operations, who I work for, is the commercial entity that actually owns the vehicles. We spend about £8 billion on cars. We buy easily 1 in 10 this year. So far, it's 13% of all newly registered vehicles in the UK. And we own those assets outright, and we lease them to our customers. That's how the model works. So we take a car, we get discounts obviously with the volume that we're buying from manufacturers. We also don't pay VAT, and then the customers, so the people who get the allowance from government, the allowance they get covers the cost of depreciation essentially. So that makes a number of different vehicles affordable to people who wouldn't be able to get them on more traditional finance, and certainly not at the ticket and list price. Just while I remember, one really interesting thing we see about that is it's catching the DNOs out. So we are working with some of the DNOs in Northern Ireland because their models for EV adoption were being blown up, and they realized they were being blown up by our customers. So they were doing models based on demographics, and our customers were getting EVs much, much sooner than they expected them to. About 40% of our customers have a household income of less than £20,000 a year, but they can afford the EV on the scheme. We have the Nissan Leaf and others for what we call zero advance payment. So they pay nothing in the dealership, and the allowance goes straight from central government to us to cover the cost. That means that EVs are starting to appear in areas where the infrastructure isn't necessarily there, and certainly central government and the DNOs, as I say, aren't expecting it to be there. So we're trying to engage more in that conversation and help by sharing our data to give more of an insight where that would be. So that's the sort of two different organisations. The other reason I point them out is because we're taking slightly different approaches to a fundamental problem around charge point accessibility. Motability, the charity, as I'll come to in a minute, has produced design standards, which is the HUBZ 1899 mentioned earlier, and we are trying to crowdsource data from our customers. So, to tell you a bit more about our scheme, we have 650,000 customers on lease, so that's 650,000 vehicles, actually slightly more than that. As I mentioned earlier, 13% of all UK car registrations in 2023. To give you an idea of what that means, 1 in 4 of every single Nissan and 1 in 5 of every single Vauxhall is ours. And all our profits are reinvested. That's a really important point. So I mentioned we have no competition. We're owned jointly by 4 banks, 25% each. We pay no dividends. All the profits go back into the scheme. At the moment, that's a really important fact, because obviously our whole commercial model works on how much can we buy a car for, how much can we sell a car for. Used car prices have been absolutely through the roof. We target a roughly £100 million profit just as a sort of safety measure. For the last 2 years, we've made £1 billion of profit by accident. Now that money can't be spent on anything other than the scheme. So what that is going into is, number 1, the charity to provide grants to make vehicles more affordable, and number 2, affordability. So the supply chain problems that mean used car prices are high also means that the list car prices, the price we're buying cars at, are much higher. So we're investing in the difference and trying to keep prices down. And thirdly, electrification. So we've made a strategic choice to invest 300 million in enabling our customers to make the EV transition. So that's through things like creating artificial price parity and also supporting the installation of home chargers for free, for example, or subsidising public charging in some cases. So that's the sort of scheme overall.
And I'm here today, so I'm from the innovation team, and we recognize that our model is going to have to fundamentally change as we move from ICE to electric vehicles. And also as the way that people get around changes fundamentally from a private car or an individual household to shared ownership of vehicles, micromobility, mobility as a service, a whole different range of things. And the way we're trying to do that is by partnering with organizations. So we're really open to quite fast-paced, small-scale pilots with pretty much anybody, to be honest. If we see a customer need and we think that there's a solution we can prove out. So we're trying to get out as much as we can and talk about what we do and find new partners. I've had some really interesting conversations earlier that hopefully will lead to something. So electrification, as I mentioned, is one of our 3 strategic pillars. Why do we care about that so much? Because, as I said, we buy new cars. So 2030, as things currently stand, as we all know, by 2035, our whole fleet will be electric vehicles. There's going to be 2.7 million disabled drivers by 2035. In terms of how many customers we could have, the number is slightly larger than that, because not all of our scheme customers would be able to drive themselves. A lot of them will receive the allowance, for example, someone who's visually impaired, and they can nominate a driver. So it could be an even higher number than that. But crucially for today and for the sort of energy ecosystem we're talking about, 50% of all of our customers we expect will have to rely on public charging. That's a sort of rough correlation from how many people have off-street parking. So getting public charging and the accessibility of public charging right is crucial. And lastly, as I mentioned, we're seeing huge demand for EVs on the scheme, probably because of that price parity we're investing in. So we're looking at about 1 in 4 applications at the moment. It's actually 1 in 5 customers tell us they want one, but at the moment we're seeing 1 in 4 applications are for EVs. So what does that look like? And I should just caveat this is a very crude projection, so don't read too much into it. And what does that mean, and why does that mean it's important for me to be at something like this? So if you look at a sort of rough projection through to 2035, where are we now? We're actually at 27,000 on the latest numbers, but about 4% of our fleet. If you just take the current appetite for EVs and take the lower number, so 1 in 5, by 2025 we'll have about 120,000 EVs. So it's a big fleet, and we think that's a big opportunity for us, but it's something we have to be investing in getting right now. Because to be honest, we missed the boat on public charging, and the infrastructure was being designed and built before we'd really woken up to the accessibility challenges. And so we're having to deal with a lot of retrofitting or a lot of understanding problems that already exist rather than trying to design them out from the beginning. So we're trying to get ahead of this fleet electrification and try and find the opportunities as soon as we can. We also think our fleet represents a really interesting opportunity. This is a crude extrapolation from the current ICE numbers that we see. If you take a typical fleet vehicle, 45,000 miles by year 3, typical consumer, 30,000, our vehicles, 20,000. So obviously, if you're thinking about the long-term value of the vehicle and the ways you can use an EV, fundamentally a massive battery and computer on wheels, if it's being used relatively little for driving, we think that creates big opportunities for wider grid services, particularly around vehicle-to-grid in the future. So, accessible public charging. I'm going to talk a little bit about what the research tells us about what the problems are. First of all, I guess perhaps most obviously, space around the vehicle is a huge issue. We understand that sites are space constrained and you've got to try and maximize the return on the investment you get. These are not cheap projects to do, but it makes them pretty much unusable in some cases for some of our customers. Now, not all of our customers are in a wheelchair or use a wheelchair most of the time, but a lot of them do have restricted mobility, and so the ability to open a door all the way is a really, really important factor. The ability to get around a charger easily is also absolutely vital. Related to that, but slightly different, is the sort of actual environment of a charger. Now, a lot of them are having bollards put in to protect them from crashes. Again, expensive infrastructure, understand why. But really, really seemingly small things, if you don't have accessibility needs, can be really, really problematic. So a very, very slight slope even, never mind a curb or a bollard, can be hugely, hugely challenging. And we also see infrastructure designed to stop cars rolling back into the infrastructure, really making it difficult for them, for our customers, to use it. The cable. This was talked about a little bit earlier, but this is a huge, huge problem. What I think it is, though, also is an interesting example of the point that was made earlier about accessibility rather than designing for disability. If you look at some of the newer rapid chargers that are being deployed, the cable is tethered or supported just because it makes it easier for anybody to use. especially as the cables are getting longer to reach the different configurations and the bigger vehicles we're starting to see. But getting the cable weight right is something I think that makes it usable for some of our customers, but actually, I think it just makes it a much better user experience generally. And then dexterity and the challenge of using the charge point plug. So if you look on this one, for example, that you have see over there, I can't figure out, so we can get it out, but there's a handle on it, which means you can use it with one hand, which is really, really helpful. A lot of the adaptations we do to our vehicles are to allow people to control the vehicle on one side or the other with just a hand. And so enabling somebody to use this infrastructure with one hand is a really, really important barrier to overcome. Charging socket height, I suppose, is relatively self-explanatory. Again, an example where designing it right feels like it's better for everybody, but it makes it a usable piece of infrastructure for our customers. And similarly for the screens and the instructions more generally. Anybody who's used EV charging infrastructure will know it's not as sort of straightforward, if you like, as putting petrol or diesel in, where you don't really have to interact. You're selecting, you're pressing, you're starting, you're stopping, and so getting that right is really important too. And feedback, so making it really clear when the charger starts and when the charger stops, and making it less and less dependent where possible on using a screen for obvious reasons. But making sure, again, that feedback is designed in a way that is inclusive. So there are hardly any charge points, for example, with feedback loops for people who have hearing aids. So what are we doing about this? I mentioned the charities approach, which is the PAS 1899, which is a world-leading design standard. And when I say world-leading, I mean really that nobody else has lent into this and got into it as much as we have. One of the strange things about the Motability scheme is that it hasn't been copied anywhere else in the world. What it does is drive massive demand for vehicles, create turnover, and generally reduce the age of fleets. Japan hasn't done it, America hasn't done it, Germany hasn't done it. What it also means is there isn't the sort of organization like Motability, which has the scale to engage with someone like OZEV and get them on board with something like these design standards. So we're starting to see already these, which are currently British standards, being incorporated in tendering documents for some of the massive infrastructure spending that's going on in the US at the moment. So at a state and federal government level, we're starting to take this standard as a way of judging the accessibility of the infrastructure that's being proposed. So that's why I say it's a world-leading design standard. It was produced in consultation with industry, so charge point operators and the designers of this infrastructure, as well as the OEMs, were consulted and were really heavily involved, because we understand that it's not just as simple as making it perfect. We really want to make it perfect, the enemy of the good. It also includes guidance from the sort of rapid charging type infrastructure like this, all the way through to the on-street sort of more simplistic Ubertricities and connected curbs of this world, and how you can make that slow charge infrastructure accessible too. The last point I want to make, which I think is really, really important, I know what was being said about this charger earlier, and a lot of the design features are sort of in line with the guidance itself, but it is really important for me to say, and the charity have really asked me to emphasize this, there is a accreditation scheme coming in the autumn, which will be selecting specific partners who are then in a place to officially judge charge sites and charge infrastructure and charge designs as compliant or not compliant with the standard. So you will start to see a kind of kite marking process around accessibility based on these standards as we go into 2024. But there are no chargers that are officially compliant with the standard as yet. But we recognize that is something that people increasingly want to be able to do, and so we're trying to make sure the process is in place to do that. What are we doing at Motability Operations? So we've looked at the sort of current situation. We've got, as I said, 27,000 EV drivers on the road now. We know that charging infrastructure is going to roughly double between now and the end of the year, so this problem is not going away. So how can we solve it for the infrastructure that's already in the ground? We're trying to use our scale to crowdsource information about charge points and their accessibility from our customers, and then aggregate that. And our principles around that are that it will be open source, it will be available to anybody. So the ZapMaps of this world, the Electriverses of this world can have access to it, can display it, can use it in their platform. We only ask that they make it possible for people using their platforms to submit the data back. We also think there's some interesting opportunities around machine learning and the images we're collecting from customers to start to do this automatically. But for the time being, we built an MVP because no one else is doing this, and we were going to have to interrupt someone else's product roadmap to get it out there through a ZapMap or others. And we're obviously pushing this out to our customer base and starting to build momentum behind it at the moment. and it aggregates the data across a number of different categories based on that design standard. And also, we're starting to select for different features that we hear from customers that are more of a yes/no question, really, really important to the decision around where they want to go and where they want to charge. So that's accessibility. I'm going to move on now to talk a little bit about energy and EVs. And as I mentioned, I'm not going to go very into this because I'll display my ignorance very, very quickly. But just to sort of explain how we're thinking about it in terms of the now and the next. First things first, the biggest barrier for our customers of having an EV is the cost, whether that be the cost upfront or the cost of actually running it and owning it. Although, as you'll know, it's quite often cheaper than a nice vehicle. With the noise around energy costs and the sort of fear that can happen again, being able to reduce the actual cost of ownership is a really, really important thing. So we're focusing on trying to enable smart charging. The really interesting challenge for me here, and this had some interesting conversations earlier, is how do you do that for the 50% of people who can't charge at home? And I think that there are opportunities to do that. It just requires quite a lot of stakeholder management, quite a lot of hurdle jumping in terms of getting it off the ground. We've done some really interesting pilots with Trojan. We're going to try and do more where people are plugging into on-street infrastructure and they're taking their home tariff with them. So they're getting that dual rate on street, which I think is one really interesting solution. We're also working with Electrify to look at their smart charging proposition and see how we can make it easier and simpler for our customers to access. Then moving across, we obviously see an opportunity in grid services to sort of generate some revenue from these assets and pass that back to customers. As I mentioned, we've got no profit incentive, so we don't need it, we don't want it. And lastly, and I personally think most excitingly, vehicle to X, particularly vehicle to home, where we can potentially zero customers' bills, or vehicle to grid, where again we can generate revenue from the fact that that car is being driven a lot less than most other vehicles on the road, and it's also available at very asymmetric times. So it's not like our customers are following a absolutely typical gen pop demand curve. There's quite often opportunities to move the demand around, and our customers are there when a lot of other people aren't there. So we think there's some value in that in terms of vehicle to grid. So this is just to illustrate some of the partners we're working with. As I mentioned, everyone from Trojan and Electricity through to Hevo, who are wireless charging, EV Energy, sort of asset aggregators, Omea Charge Point, producer, Indra and Easy the same, and Believe obviously also on-street infrastructure. So that's kind of the overview, but really I'm here to sort of have conversations with people and sort of find opportunities for us to pilot and test things. I don't know how long that was. Hopefully it wasn't half an hour. But if you've got any time, I'm very happy to take any questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you see the sort of accessibility standard becoming legislation? Or is it always going to be guidance?
Yeah, it's, obviously that was the ambition. I think that I would hope it becomes legislation. I think that government is trying to balance the sort of necessity to get infrastructure in the ground against its accessibility. What we do see though, actually, is if you think about sort of full compliance versus sort of 80%, 90% compliance, a lot of the limitations are actually not coming from the CPOs, they're coming from the sites themselves. So it's just going to be a lot of work to try and change the actual physical reality of where they are, or just financially not viable. So I think what we've seen is by setting a gold standard, a lot of people are trying to get there. And that has really improved the design, particularly of public rapid infrastructure. But yes, long term, we are pushing for, and we hope it will be legislation. I think it's also becoming slightly legislation by the back door, in the sense that we understand that some of the coming tranches of funding for EV infrastructure, for charging infrastructure, sorry, for 2024, will probably have an accessibility weighting in the assessment process. So that, I guess, then starts to drive some of the uptake as well, where it is commercially viable rather than mandating it and potentially nipping things in the bud.
So there could be subsidies to help you achieve them, possibly.
I guess in a sense, yeah. I think what you might start to see is that if you have two competing bids with sort of same number of charges at the same speeds, but one of them is able to do that, meeting some of the pass standards or all of the pass standards.
Half the site being more accessible.
Yeah, so I think you'll probably end up in a similar situation. Yeah, rather than it all being accessible, but there will be some weighting that's applied in the same way that every parking space in any supermarket car park is not a disabled bay. But I think you will start to see where there's parity, the accessible sort of proposal for government funding certainly more likely to get funded.
And is it something who's going to fund anything?
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously, with the profits we've been making, it's something we've been thinking about. The problem with it is that it's such a long-term investment, and it's a big, like 25 years plus, and it's a volatile market, and it's a very fast-changing market, and we have to be quite risk-averse. So the money's really going back into the charity to fund accessibility through grants for vehicles.
With the subsidies on public charging, is that done through like a fuel card scheme or something like that?
So at the moment, it's all to do with trying to offer parity in the proposition. So if we can part fund the installation of a home charger, but you can't have a home charger, how do we make it fairer? So at the moment, it's not the charge itself, because obviously we don't provide subsidised petrol, but trying to strip out the transaction costs or the membership costs. And we are piloting we were using BP Pulse. We're now piloting a sort of aggregated scheme across loads more charge point operators. And what we're seeing with that actually is having conversations with charge point operators where they are willing to sort of think about discounts, and certainly are sort of drawn to the volume of people we can promise. No? Okay. Well, thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you.